This likely won't be a long video considering I just uploaded a video yesterday on why I thought the Bulls' final games of this season are so critical to their future going into the offseason and next season. And granted, I didn't do a deep dive into the matchups themselves for the 5 remaining games, but more so focusing on the things that we need to see from the Bulls to close out the season. And given the Bulls played last night against the Pistons, which they won, and they are now down to their final 4 games all in this week starting tomorrow, pretty crazy to say really that this is the last week of the NBA regular season. The time has just gone by so quickly. I mean, I started this channel right before the season had begun, and it seems like a long time ago since I have, although it has been a lot of fun creating content and interacting with you guys on here. But here we are, the last week of the season, likely the final games of the year for the Bulls, since the chances of making it to the postseason are still unlikely, but it's not over. They're not out of it yet. So let's talk about these last games, who the Bulls will be playing, and some potential scenarios in the unlikely event that they still could make the postseason. So what's going on, everyone? You are listening to Bull Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Guys, this is the final week of the season, and I just want to do a quick shout out and thank you to all of you, my viewers, and of course my subscribers. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you guys and all of your support in helping grow the channel over these past few months since the start of the season. I will be doing a season-ending giveaway, so stay tuned for that this week and keep an eye out for it when I announce it. The best way to do that, so you make sure that you don't miss a video, is to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell notifications if you haven't already. But anyway, let's get into the Bulls game of this week, which starts off tomorrow against the Nets. They'll take on the Raptors on Thursday and then close out their season over the weekend against the Nets again, and then finally the Milwaukee Bucks. Now bear in mind, a lot of things can happen in terms of who is going to be available for each of these games, mainly because it's very common for teams who have already established playoff seeding and there isn't much room for adjustments to that, to then sit out their best players to not risk injury right before going into the playoffs. And then on the opposite end, for teams who have already been eliminated and don't have anything to play for, they're likely going to rest their players and give some of their younger guys more minutes for development and experience. And for these 3 teams that the Bulls are going to be playing, well, they all fit that mold. The Nets, who are currently sitting second in the East, are too far behind to really pass the Sixers for the first seed at this point. However, they are only a half a game ahead of the Bucks, who the Bulls will also be playing, but on their very last game. So I suspect the Nets will likely play their best players unless they're injured, of course, for tomorrow's game. But by the second game that they play them on Saturday, the season will likely already be figured out in terms of playoff seeding, and I think that will also likely be the case for the Bulls in their final game against the Bucks, because the Bucks are well ahead of the Knicks to even worry about falling to the 4th seed. The only way these two teams play as hard as they can in terms of including all of their players if healthy is if these teams end up being tied for the 2nd seed in that final weekend. Then yeah, they're likely going to play at full strength, although who knows, maybe the difference between the 3 and the 2 seed won't mean as much to them in terms of keeping their players healthy, and would rather just sit them out regardless. So with all of that being said, the Bulls are likely going to see a Nets team tomorrow that is looking to win. Well, they should always be looking to win. I mean more so that they're going to probably not rest their players in preparation for the playoffs, given they likely want to lock in that number 2 seed and not fall behind the Bucks. However, at the same time, at the time of this recording anyway, James Harden is of course out with a hamstring injury, but is expected to make a return by the postseason, if not earlier. And Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, at least at the time of this recording again, will be playing in tomorrow's matchup. Again, things can obviously change between now and tomorrow, especially when it comes to the Nets, as those big 3 stars just like to take time off whenever they want, it seems. Now, the last time these two teams met, which is the first time that they actually played each other, the Bulls played a solid game at home and won, which was their first win after the trade deadline. Now, both Kevin Durant and James Harden did not play in that game, and let's be honest, if they had, the Bulls likely would not have won. But regardless, it was a good game for the Bulls, where they moved the ball well, got multiple guys involved, shot the ball at a very efficient rate that resulted in a win. Now, Harden likely won't be available for tomorrow's game, and possibly not on Saturdays either, but if Kevin Durant and Kyrie are both playing, I have a hard time seeing how the Bulls win this one. Granted, based on, the way that they have been playing recently, and if they can keep it up in that level of play, it's possible they could make this a real fight and potentially even steal a win. But I just don't think the Bulls have an answer for a guy like Kevin Durant on defense. Likely, you would see a combination of Tice, Patrick Williams, and Thaddeus Young guarding him, who were all decent defenders, don't get me wrong, but Kevin Durant is a generational talent, a future Hall of Famer who is still balling out even after missing a whole season last year. And then, of course, Kyrie Irving. I mean, the Bulls played and defended him well in that first game, but that's also because Kyrie didn't have his other two stars, that are so good that it enables him to play more off the ball and get open looks rather than getting double teamed most games when, those guys aren't in the lineup, which is what the Bulls did in that first game. And obviously, you can't forget that the Nets still have Blake Griffin, a great shooter, and Joe Harris. It's a stacked team, but again, with the way that the Bulls have been playing recently, you never know. And of course, I wouldn't be surprised if one of Kyrie Irving or Kevin Durant end up sitting this game, as I'm pretty sure they're going to want to start resting right before the end of the season heading into the playoffs. Then the Bulls will take on the Raptors on Thursday. Now, for the Raptors, at the time of this recording, they technically still have not been eliminated from playoff contention, but they're in even worse shape than the Bulls in making the playoffs. They're 4.5 games behind the 10th spot, and they also have a hard schedule to close out the season. So I honestly wouldn't be surprised if the Raptors just try to lose those last few games. In a way, they're already starting to do that, although these are claimed to be injuries. But Fred VanVleet is day-to-day, Pascal Siakam is day-to-day, Rodney Hood is currently out, Kyle Lowry was out of the last game of their lineup. So if these guys are out, and the Raptors are that short-handed, this should be a fairly easy win for the Bulls. Again, as long as they don't play down to their competition, not getting complacent and lazy, thinking that this game is just going to be an easy win for them. Then, of course, they play the Nets again on Saturday. We already talked about that and what to expect from that team. A very similar type situation. We'll have to wait and see how things transpire throughout the week and whether it means that Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving play in that game, and potentially James Harden, but it sounds like he's likely going to be out and not returning until the playoffs start. Then the following day for the Bulls, their last game of the season against the Milwaukee Bucks. This one is an interesting one because the Bulls obviously do not match up well against the Bucks anytime they have played them, and they have really struggled even when the Bucks were without Giannis. And I think it's interesting to see how much the Bucks are going to try and push for that 2 seed to see if they're still playing at full speed for that last game of the season. Whether they actually rest guys like Giannis, who they already kind of have been, or even Drew Holiday or Chris Middleton. I mean, the Bucks, this postseason is very important because despite having arguably the best player in the league and finishing with the best record the last 2 seasons, they have failed to make a deep run in the playoffs. Most people thought that they were a shoo-in to make it out of the East last season compared to their competition, and they lost to the Heat in the second round and really getting beaten up by them. That was bad. And the same thing happened to them the prior season. Of course, they made some trades that brought in some additional pieces to help the roster, but if they want to keep Giannis happy and engaged, they need to start winning. And of course, the East didn't get any easier with the rise of the Sixers and the Nets. I know Giannis just signed a supermax contract, but that doesn't mean that he can't demand a trade, especially since he's a superstar with elite talent that can have that kind of leverage to do so. Anyway, a bit of a tangent there. In short, because of all of this and knowing what's riding on the line for the Bucks in this postseason, I wouldn't be shocked if they rested all 3 of Giannis, Drew Holiday, and Chris Middleton, even if they do in fact have a shot at getting the number 2 seed, which if that ends up being the case, it would be unacceptable for the Bulls to lose that game as long as the Bulls, are fully healthy. So as far as my predictions that I do every week, you know what, guys? Go big or go home. I'm saying the Bulls go 4-0, meaning they'll close out the season on a 7-game winning streak, ball out, and see if they somehow can squeak into the playoffs, hoping the Pacers continue to slip and fall in the standings and manage to get the 10 spot for the play-in. I know it's wishful thinking, but hey, it's really the only way the Bulls could potentially have a shot securing a postseason bid is to go 4-0. If they lose any one of these games, it's over for sure, in my view. So we'll have to keep an eye on how the Pacers do and they fare for their last game. Same with the Wizards to an extent, although I think the way that they've been trending upwards, it's unlikely that they'll fall out of playoff contention. I want to hear what you guys think, though. How do you think the Bulls will close out their final week of the season? Do you think that they can somehow still make the play-in, or are we all just dreaming at this point? Let me know in the comments. And guys, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in as always, and I will catch you in the next one.